Blue is the one color that has followed the royal wardrobe through every single era, every single dynasty, and every single decade of modern photography. And there is a very good reason for that. It is the color of sapphires, the color of something blue, tucked into a wedding gown for luck, and the color that Queen Charlotte herself made so fashionable in 18th century England that an entire shade still carries her family's name today: royal blue. Long before Instagram existed to dissect every single seam a royal wore in real time, blue was already doing quiet diplomatic work on state visits, echoing a host country's flag, softening a hard news cycle, or simply making sure a princess stood out in a sea of black tie, black and cream. Today we are counting down the top 30 best blue dresses ever worn by royals, spanning continents, generations, and more sapphire silk than most jewelry boxes could ever hold. What makes blue such a uniquely powerful color on a royal body, specifically, is that it photographs beautifully under almost any lighting condition you can think of, from harsh midday sun on a walkabout to the warm gold wash of a state banquet chandelier. It also happens to be one of the only colors that reads as both approachable and undeniably regal at the exact same time, which is precisely why it keeps showing up again and again at the single biggest, most photographed moments in modern royal history: engagements, tours, jubilees, and the kind of state dinners that end up studied by fashion historians for decades afterward. Some of the dresses on this list were quiet, elegant choices that simply did their job beautifully, dressing a woman for a single afternoon and then quietly retreating into the archives. Others completely reshaped how the public thought about royal fashion the second the photos went out, spawning sold-out replicas, magazine retrospectives, and entire fashion history essays written years after the fact. And one, sitting right at the very top of this countdown, is arguably the single most famous dress any royal has ever worn, in any color, full stop. A dress so iconic that most people can picture it instantly, even if they could not tell you the designer's name. We pulled this particular list together by looking at cultural staying power above almost everything else. Which dresses got talked about for decades rather than days? Which ones changed how a royal was perceived? And which ones simply refuse to leave the public imagination no matter how much time passes? Some entries are recent. Others stretch all the way back to the earliest days of royal photography, becoming a genuine global obsession. All 30 of them earned their spot for a real reason. And we think you are going to have some strong opinions by the time we reach the end. This countdown also spans several different royal houses on purpose, rather than sticking to just one family. The British royal family understandably dominates a huge share of this list, simply because it remains the single most photographed monarchy on the planet, with the deepest, most exhaustively documented fashion archive anywhere in the world. But Scandinavian, Dutch, Belgian, Spanish, Jordanian, Monegasque, and Japanese royal fashion have all produced genuinely stunning blue moments of their own over the decades. And leaving any of them off this list, purely to keep things simpler, would have meant missing some of the very best entries we found while putting this whole countdown together. Before we get into it, if you love royal fashion history as much as we do, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now, because we are about to walk through decades of sapphire silk, midnight velvet, and cobalt satin together, and trust me, you do not want to miss what is waiting for you at number 1. It might be the most iconic dress on this entire list, blue or otherwise. Let's get into it. Number 30. Princess Beatrice has spent the last several years quietly building one of the more interesting style profiles in the modern royal family, leaning into vintage-inspired silhouettes rather than chasing whatever is trending that particular season. Her powder blue tulle gown, worn to a gala at the Royal Academy of Arts, leaned fully into that instinct with a fitted boned bodice and a soft, voluminous skirt that felt like it had wandered in from an entirely different, more romantic era of royal dressing. It was not the loudest look of the night, and it did not need to be. The pale, almost dusty shade of blue she chose let the architecture of the dress do the talking, and it earned her a quiet, well-deserved spot on best-dressed lists the following morning. Stylists at the time pointed out how carefully the shade had been matched to her natural coloring, warm enough not to wash her out under evening lighting, cool enough to still read as unmistakably blue in every photograph. A gentle way to open this countdown, and proof that a soft blue can hold a room just as easily as a bold one. Number 29. Zara Tindall has never been the most traditionally glamorous royal on any given red carpet, and that is very much part of her appeal. She tends to favor sharp, wearable pieces over anything overly fussy, and her cobalt wrap dress at the Cheltenham Festival is a perfect example of that instinct working exactly as intended. The rich, saturated blue popped beautifully against the green of the racecourse lawns, and the simple wrap silhouette let her move easily between the paddock, the private boxes, and the winner's enclosure without a single wardrobe adjustment needed. Racegoers and photographers alike tend to look forward to her Cheltenham outfits every year precisely because they feel real. Dresses a genuinely busy woman can actually live in for 8 hours straight rather than pose in for 8 minutes. It is not a dress built for a palace ballroom, and it was never trying to be. It is a dress built for a woman who has somewhere to actually be, and it did its job with real, effortless style. As an accomplished equestrian herself, Zara has always dressed with genuine practicality in mind first, glamour second, and that ordering of priorities is exactly what makes her occasional standout moments feel so much more authentic than a look assembled purely for the cameras. Number 28. Duchess Sophie of Edinburgh. Sophie has spent decades quietly becoming one of the most reliably elegant dressers in the entire family, rarely making headlines for the wrong reasons and consistently turning out polished, considered looks. Her periwinkle blue gown at a state banquet, a soft silvery blue with a fluid floor-length drape, is a great example of exactly why that reputation exists. The color sat somewhere between blue and lilac depending on the lighting in the room, giving the dress a subtle, shifting quality across the evening's photographs. The kind of detail that only becomes obvious once you compare pictures taken at different points in the night. Paired with a simple diamond necklace and understated hair, the whole look read as confident rather than attention-seeking, which is very much the Sophie signature at this point in her royal career. She has never needed to shout to be remembered, and this dress is a quiet, elegant argument for restraint over spectacle. Number 27. Crown Princess Mette-Marit of Norway. The Nobel Peace Prize banquet in Oslo has produced some genuinely stunning royal fashion over the years, and Crown Princess Mette-Marit's deep blue velvet gown belongs firmly in that conversation. The heavy, ink-dark fabric caught the banquet hall's low light beautifully, giving the dress a rich, almost bottomless quality on camera, while a simple, structured bodice kept the whole silhouette from tipping into anything overly dramatic. Norwegian royal style tends to favor quiet sophistication over maximalist statements, and this dress captured that philosophy perfectly. A single, confident color choice, cut cleanly, worn with total ease. Number 26. Queen Mathilde of Belgium. Queen Mathilde has quietly become one of the most consistently well-dressed working royals in Europe, and her royal blue caped gown for Belgium's National Day celebrations shows exactly why. The dramatic cape detail, sweeping off the shoulders and trailing slightly behind her as she walked, added real movement and grandeur to what was, underneath all that drama, a fairly simple column silhouette. It is the kind of dress that photographs just as well from behind as it does from the front, which is a genuinely underrated skill in a role that involves an enormous amount of walking past cameras, waving to crowds, and standing for long stretches at official ceremonies, where every single angle eventually ends up published somewhere. Number 25. Princess Marie Chantal of Greece. Princess Marie Chantal has spent years cultivating a reputation as one of the sharpest dressers in the wider, extended European royal circle. Someone whose looks get dissected by fashion editors just as closely as any reigning queens. Her sapphire gown at a charity gala, a sleek, one-shoulder design with minimal embellishment, let the sheer intensity of the color carry the entire look. There was no need for beading or sequins here. The fabric itself, cut close to the body and catching the light with every step, did more than enough work on its own, proving once again that restraint, when paired with exactly the right shade of blue, can hit just as hard as a fully embellished showstopper. Marie Chantal has often spoken about favoring pieces that will still look elegant in photographs 20 years from now, rather than chasing whatever happens to be trending that particular season. And this gown is a strong argument that the strategy works exactly as intended. Number 24. Crown Princess Victoria of Sweden. Sweden's future queen has a well-earned reputation for favoring clean, architectural silhouettes over anything fussy, and her ice blue gown at a state dinner fits that pattern beautifully. The pale, almost frosted shade of blue she chose felt distinctly Scandinavian, cool and considered rather than warm or romantic, with a structured bodice that gave the whole look a sense of quiet authority. It is not the flashiest dress on this list by any measure, but it did not need to be loud to be memorable, and Swedish fashion commentators pointed to it afterward as a strong preview of the kind of understated, confident dressing she is expected to lean on even more heavily once she eventually ascends to the throne. The gown also paired beautifully with a diamond tiara from the Swedish royal vault, the cool tones of the stones echoing the frosted blue of the fabric almost perfectly, a small styling detail that made the whole ensemble feel considered from head to toe rather than assembled piece by piece. Number 23. Empress Masako of Japan. Technically an imperial rather than a royal title, but given how closely the Japanese imperial family's formal fashion gets studied alongside Europe's royal houses, it would feel wrong to leave this one off entirely. Empress Masako's pale blue gown at a state banquet, paired with an elaborate diamond tiara passed down through generations of the imperial family, brought together centuries of tradition with a genuinely modern, clean silhouette. The soft powder blue shade complemented the tiara's brilliance without competing against it, letting both the dress and the jewelry share the spotlight evenly. A careful balancing act that formal imperial dressing demands, and that this particular gown pulled off with real precision. Imperial fashion protocol in Japan tends to be considerably more rigid and tradition-bound than most European royal dress codes, which makes it all the more impressive when a gown manages to feel simultaneously respectful of centuries of custom and quietly, unmistakably modern, exactly the balance Empress Masako struck here. 22. Queen Sylvia of Sweden. Queen Sylvia has been showing up to the Nobel Prize banquet in spectacular gowns for so many decades now that longtime royal watchers genuinely look forward to her entrance every single year. And her deep blue banquet gown remains one of her most talked about entries. Heavily embellished at the bodice and paired with an enormous sapphire and diamond tiara, the dress leaned fully into old-world glamour in a way that felt entirely earned, given the occasion. Some looks are built for a quick photo call. This one was built for an evening that stretches on for hours, filled with speeches, toasts, and formal introductions, and it held up beautifully across every single course of the banquet, still looking sharp and structured in photographs taken well past midnight. Queen Sylvia has often said in interviews that she treats the Nobel banquet almost like a second wedding day every single year. And gowns like this one make it very easy to believe her. Number 21. Princess Charlene of Monaco. Princess Charlene's cobalt gown at the Monaco Red Cross Gala leaned into exactly the kind of bold, structured glamour that particular event tends to invite every single year. The rich, saturated blue read as confident and modern rather than traditional, and a sculptural neckline gave the whole silhouette real architectural interest without tipping over into anything overly theatrical. Monaco's royal family has always understood the assignment when it comes to that particular red carpet, treating it almost like their own private runway once a year. And this dress is a great example of exactly why that reputation persists. Number 20. Queen Rania of Jordan. Queen Rania has long been considered one of the most fashion-forward consorts anywhere in the world, regularly mixing major international designers with a distinctly modern sensibility, and her royal blue gown at a state visit is a perfect showcase of that reputation. Clean lines, a fitted waist, and a floor-sweeping skirt gave the dress an effortlessly regal quality, while the vivid, saturated shade of blue she chose ensured she stood out beautifully in every single official photograph from that visit, without ever tipping into anything showy or overdone. Fashion publications across the Middle East and Europe both ran the look the following day, a rare bit of genuine cross-continental agreement on a single outfit. Queen Rania has built a reputation for using fashion as a genuine diplomatic tool over the course of her decades in public life, often favoring designers from the region she is visiting, and this particular gown fits seamlessly into that broader pattern of thoughtful, deliberate dressing. Number 19. Camilla. Camilla has developed a very specific, very recognizable formula over her years as a working royal, favoring soft, structured coat dresses in bold, cheerful colors for daytime engagements. And her cornflower blue coat dress at Trooping the Color sits right at the center of that formula. The color was bright enough to stand out from a distance, which matters enormously on a day built almost entirely around crowds trying to spot her from across a very wide street. While the tailored, practical cut let her comfortably manage hours of standing, waving, and carriage travel without a single wrinkle out of place. It is dressing built for function first, and the fact that it still manages to look genuinely elegant is precisely the trick. Camilla has spoken candidly in the past about learning the practical demands of royal dressing somewhat later in life than most of the women on this list. And formulas like this cornflower blue coat dress show just how thoroughly she has mastered the assignment since stepping into a considerably more public role. Number 18. Sarah Ferguson, Duchess of York. Rewinding the clock back to the 1980s for a moment, Sarah Ferguson's sapphire gown at a formal gala captures a very specific, very of-its-era kind of royal glamour. Dramatic puffed sleeves, a fitted bodice, and a rich jewel-toned blue that photographed beautifully under the era's flash photography. It is a look that reads as distinctly 80s the second you see it, big shoulders and all, but the underlying instinct, that deep, saturated blue reads as pure glamour under bright lights, has genuinely never gone out of style, even if the sleeves eventually did. Look back at enough royal galas from that decade, and you will notice the same lesson getting relearned again and again by different women in different gowns. Number 17. Princess Anne. Princess Anne has built her entire reputation on practicality over pageantry, favoring sensible tweed and sturdy coats over anything overly glamorous for the vast majority of her decades of royal service, which is exactly what makes one particular formal blue gown from an early state visit so memorable. A rare, fully glamorous moment from a royal who almost never gives you one. The rich, structured gown, worn with a diamond tiara and full evening jewels, proved that when Anne does decide to go all out, she can hold a room just as easily as anyone else on this list. It simply does not happen very often, which is exactly what makes the moments it does happen so worth remembering, and exactly why royal fashion historians still bring this particular photograph up whenever her name comes up in a style conversation. Number 16. Grace Kelly, Princess of Monaco. Grace Kelly's transformation from Hollywood's biggest leading lady into one of the most photographed princesses on the planet remains one of the great fashion stories of the 20th century. In one of her earliest official gowns as Princess of Monaco, a sky blue silk evening dress with a clean fitted bodice and a softly gathered skirt showed the world exactly what that new chapter was going to look like. It carried over the same effortless Hollywood polish she had spent years perfecting on screen, translated seamlessly into her brand new royal life, and it set a genuinely high bar for every princess who has followed in her footsteps since. Decades of photographers have spent entire careers chasing the same easy, luminous quality this dress captured almost by instinct on one of her very first official outings. All right, we are officially halfway through this entire countdown, and things are only getting more iconic from this point forward. If you are enjoying this deep dive through royal fashion history with us so far, now is honestly the perfect moment to go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you do not miss our next big royal fashion countdown when it drops. And let me know down in the comments section, are you personally team modern royals or are you more team old school glamour? I genuinely want to know which era you think has produced the better blue dresses overall. Now let's get into the top 15 together. Number 15. Princess Sofia of Sweden. Princess Sofia has grown into one of the more quietly confident dressers in the Swedish royal family since joining it, and her cobalt gown at the Nobel banquet shows off exactly that growth. A fitted, structured bodice gave way to a sweeping, floor-length skirt in the same rich, saturated blue throughout, creating a clean, unbroken column of color that photographed beautifully as she moved through the crowded banquet hall. Paired with simple diamond drop earrings and minimal additional jewelry, the dress let the color itself carry the entire statement, and it worked beautifully, a lesson in editing that plenty of far more experienced royal dressers still occasionally forget to apply. Number 14. Princess Eugenie has quietly built a reputation for favoring interesting cuts and unexpected details over safe, predictable silhouettes, and her sapphire gown at a formal gala leaned fully into that instinct. A dramatic sculpted neckline gave the dress real visual interest up top, while the rich, jewel-toned blue skirt below kept the overall look grounded and elegant, rather than overly experimental. It is the kind of dress that rewards a second look, revealing new details in the draping and construction the longer you actually study it, which is exactly the kind of thoughtful design work that tends to separate a genuinely great gown from one that simply photographs fine and gets forgotten by the following week. Eugenie has spoken openly about caring more about a dress's story and craftsmanship than about chasing headlines. And this particular gown, quietly complex rather than loudly dramatic, reflects that philosophy perfectly. Number 13. Crown Princess Marie of Denmark. Crown Princess Marie has a well-earned reputation as one of the most consistently elegant dressers working anywhere in European royal circles today. And her sapphire gown at a state banquet is a masterclass in exactly why. Clean, minimal detailing let the deep, rich color of the fabric do essentially all of the work, while a fitted bodice and a long, fluid skirt gave the entire silhouette an effortless, old-world glamour that never once tipped into anything overdone. It is proof that sometimes the most memorable dress in the room is also the simplest one, worn with total, unshakable confidence, the kind that genuinely cannot be taught and has to be earned across years of learning exactly what works on your own frame. Marie, born and raised outside the world of royal tradition before marrying into the Danish crown, has often credited that outsider's perspective with helping her develop such a clear editorial eye for exactly which details a gown actually needs and which ones it can comfortably do without. Number 12. Meghan Markle. Meghan Markle's pale blue coat, worn for an official autumn tour engagement in Melbourne, is a masterclass in exactly how much impact a simple, well-tailored piece can have in the right setting. The soft, powdery shades stood out beautifully against a backdrop of dark outerwear coats and a crisp, cold morning, while the clean, structured cut kept the whole look feeling polished rather than casual. It is not a gown, and it was never trying to be one. It is proof that best dressed does not always require a ball gown. Sometimes it just requires knowing precisely which coat to reach for on a breezy October morning with every single camera in the world pointed directly at you and getting it exactly right on the very first try. Public walkabouts have become one of the single most photographed royal fashion moments of the entire calendar year, with barely any margin for error. And this particular coat remains one of the most replicated pieces from her entire wardrobe as a working royal. Number 11. Princess Diana's first appearance on this countdown comes from a formal gala in the mid-1980s, where she wore a sapphire brush old-field gown that helped cement her reputation as one of the most photographed women on the planet at the time. The rich blue, paired with a dramatic diamond necklace, gave her an air of grown-up glamour that felt like a genuine departure from her softer, more girlish early looks as a new royal. It is an early sign of the fashion instincts that would eventually make her an era-defining style icon, a woman capable of using a single gown to quietly announce that she was growing into the role in real time, right in front of the cameras. It is very much not the last time you are going to see her name on this list. Number 10. Kate, Princess of Wales. Kate's blue coat dress for Trooping the Color, worn on Horse Guards parade in front of tens of thousands of onlookers and an even larger television audience at home, shows off exactly the kind of practical glamour she has built her entire public wardrobe around. The tailored, structured cut moved easily through hours of carriage rides and balcony appearances, while the rich, saturated shade of blue stood out beautifully against the scarlet uniforms and gold braids surrounding her all afternoon. It is a masterclass in dressing for an incredibly specific, incredibly demanding occasion, one that requires looking flawless from a balcony 100 meters away, just as much as it requires looking flawless up close, and it is very much not the last Kate entry on this countdown. Trooping the color also requires an enormous amount of quiet, practical planning that rarely gets discussed. The coat has to move comfortably inside an open carriage, withstand a light breeze without ever looking untidy, and still photograph sharply from the ground, from a rooftop camera, and from a television helicopter circling overhead, all within the same single afternoon. Number 9. Queen Maxima of the Netherlands. Queen Maxima has one of the boldest, most fearless approaches to color and silhouette of any working royal on the planet today, and her structured cobalt gown at a state banquet shows off exactly why fashion critics adore covering her every single year. Dramatic volume at the shoulder gave the dress genuine architectural presence, while the deep, confident blue ensured she was impossible to miss from absolutely any angle in the room. Maxima rarely plays it safe, favoring bold prints and daring silhouettes far more often than the average consort, and this particular gown is proof that the gamble almost always pays off beautifully for her, turning a formal state occasion into something that genuinely looked like couture runway footage. She has become something of a case study for fashion students specifically because she treats every single state occasion as a genuine opportunity rather than an obligation, and it shows in absolutely every seam of this gown. Number 8. Queen Letizia of Spain. Queen Letizia has earned a reputation as one of the most fashion-literate consorts in modern royal history, mixing high-street pieces with major designer gowns in a way that consistently surprises fashion editors. And her statement blue gown at a formal gala is exactly the kind of look that keeps her on best-dressed lists year after year. A sharp, tailored bodice gave way to a dramatic, sweeping skirt, and the intense, saturated shade of blue she chose photographed beautifully under the event's bright lighting. It is confident, modern, and unmistakably her. The kind of dress that could not realistically be mistaken for belonging to anyone else in the room. Number 7. Diana's second appearance on this countdown comes courtesy of a striking, sequin-covered Catherine Walker gown, a midnight blue masterpiece featuring a sparkling, column-style silhouette that critics at the time noted captured the glamorous zenith of late 1980s fashion. Diana wore it to a formal gala in Vienna, and it became an instant favorite among royal watchers for its sheer, unapologetic drama, a huge departure from the softer, more traditional silhouettes she had worn earlier in her royal career. Decades later, the dress sold at auction for a genuinely staggering sum, proof that its cultural staying power only grew stronger with time rather than fading the way most red carpet moments eventually do. Still discussed by fashion historians as one of the defining gowns of her entire wardrobe. It also marked a genuine turning point in how Diana approached her public image more broadly, moving away from the softer, more deferential styling of her earliest royal years, and toward a bolder, more self-assured presence that she would continue refining for the rest of her life. Number 6. Queen Elizabeth II. Long before she became the longest reigning monarch in British history, a young Queen Elizabeth wore a sapphire blue gown on one of her earliest Commonwealth tours, and the photographs from that trip remain some of the most striking images of her entire early reign. The rich, formal blue, paired with a dazzling set of sapphire jewels, projected exactly the kind of quiet, confident authority a brand new monarch needed to convey to a watching world still getting used to seeing her in the role at all. It is an early, powerful reminder that even a queen has to build her own visual language from scratch, one carefully chosen gown at a time, long before she settles into the instantly recognizable color-blocked wardrobe she would eventually become known for across the rest of her 70-year reign. Crowds along that tour route reportedly waited for hours just to catch a glimpse of the young monarch, and newsreel footage from the visit shows the sapphire gown catching the light beautifully every single time she stepped out of a car or onto a stage. turning what could have been a fairly routine diplomatic stop into genuine lasting news footage. Number 5. Meghan Markle. Meghan Markle's Cobalt Sophia cape gown, worn for a high-profile formal state dinner in Fiji, remains one of her most striking formal looks from her time as a working royal. The rich, fitted silhouette skimmed close to her frame before flaring gently at the hem, and the deep, confident blue read as both modern and appropriately formal for an official ceremonial duty. It is a genuinely celebrated entry in her overall royal wardrobe, often featured prominently alongside her most talked-about red carpet moments, and one that longtime royal fashion watchers still bring up as one of her most successful formal looks. Proof that her strongest style moments were always grounded in immaculate tailoring. The state visit itself required her to greet dignitaries and walk long ceremonial carpets, a genuinely demanding bit of diplomatic choreography, and the dress managed to look just as sharp in motion as it did standing perfectly still for the official photographs beforehand. Number 4. Kate, Princess of Wales. Kate's sapphire Jenny Packham gown, worn during a high-profile London gala in her Diamond Jubilee year, remains one of the single most talked-about gowns of her entire royal wardrobe. The flowing design, in a deep, jewel-toned sapphire, was intentionally chosen to complement the very same engagement ring once worn by Princess Diana, now sitting on Kate's own hand, creating a quiet, powerful visual thread between two generations of royal women without a single word needing to be said about it. The dress generated worldwide headlines almost instantly once the photos circulated, cementing what fashion journalists had already started calling the Kate effect. The almost immediate, worldwide demand for absolutely anything she is photographed wearing. A phenomenon that continues to shape entire sections of the fashion retail industry to this day. If this list has taught you anything new about royal fashion history today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button before we finish. Number 3. Queen Elizabeth. Queen Elizabeth's blue hat and matching coat, worn for the state opening of Parliament in 2017, instantly became one of the single most talked about outfits of her entire 70-year reign, for reasons that had absolutely nothing to do with the fabric or the cut. The bright, cornflower blue hat was topped with a cluster of small yellow flowers, and the overall combination struck an enormous number of viewers as an unmistakable visual echo of the European Union flag. Arriving at a political moment when very few outfits in the world could have carried that particular symbolic weight. The palace never confirmed any intentional message behind the choice, and the Queen famously never explained her own wardrobe decisions to the press. But the sheer, immediate global conversation that single hat sparked, discussed, and dissected across newspapers and television broadcasts worldwide within hours proves that even a monarch known for decades of famously neutral, carefully apolitical dressing could still send the entire world into speculation with nothing more than one very well-timed shade of blue, and it remains one of the most searched royal outfits of her entire final decade on the throne. Number 2. Kate, Princess of Wales. Kate's sapphire blue wrap dress, worn for the official photo call announcing her engagement to Prince William in 2010, might be the single most consequential dress on this entire countdown. In terms of pure cultural impact, the deep, rich blue was chosen deliberately to draw a direct visual line to the very same sapphire engagement ring, once belonging to Princess Diana, that William had just placed on her hand, turning the entire look into a quiet, devastatingly effective tribute before a single word of the engagement interview had even been broadcast. The dress sold out within hours of the photos going public, launched an entirely new category of instant, mass-market royal-inspired fashion, and remains to this day one of the most searched, most copied dresses in modern royal history. It set the template for everything the Kate effect would eventually become, and more than a decade later, replicas of that exact wrap dress are still being sold online to brides-to-be and royal fans alike. Kate's sapphire tour gown deserves a similar callback. A major royal tour took her and William across several host cities in the span of just a few weeks. An exhausting, heavily photographed schedule with barely any downtime between engagements, and this particular sapphire gown was widely considered the single strongest look of the entire trip. Royal correspondents traveling with the tour noted that the color seemed to genuinely glow under the lights of the outdoor gala where she wore it. A small, almost accidental piece of good luck that turned an already strong dress into one of the defining images of her entire decade as Duchess of Cambridge. Number 1. Princess Diana. And the single best blue dress ever worn by a royal, at least according to this particular countdown, goes to Princess Diana's midnight blue velvet gown, designed by Victor Edelstein, worn to a state dinner at the White House in November of 1985. The dress itself, off the shoulder, deeply saturated, and elegantly simple compared to some of the more embellished gowns elsewhere on this list, might not have become quite so legendary on its own. What sealed its place in fashion history forever was what happened next. Diana was pulled onto the dance floor by John Travolta, and the two of them danced together for several unforgettable minutes in front of the assembled crowd, creating one of the single most photographed, that most replayed moments in the entire history of the British monarchy. The gown has since become known simply as the Travolta dress, and decades later, it sold at auction for a truly enormous sum, far beyond what almost any other piece of royal clothing has ever fetched. It is a perfect final entry for this countdown, because it captures everything blue has ever done for royal fashion in one single, unforgettable garment: elegance, restraint, and a single perfect moment that the entire world simply could not stop watching, replayed in documentaries and retrospectives for nearly 4 decades and counting. And still, to this day, the single image most people picture the instant anyone says the words royal blue dress. What makes the whole moment even more remarkable, looking back, is how little planning actually went into it. Diana did not know she was going to be pulled onto that dance floor when she got dressed that evening, which means the single most iconic royal fashion moment of the 20th century happened entirely by accident. A simple, elegant gown just doing its job quietly until the exact right circumstances turned it into legend. It is genuinely hard to think of another piece of clothing, royal or otherwise, that managed to become quite so famous through nothing more than being in exactly the right place, on exactly the right woman, at exactly the right unscripted moment. It is a fitting note to end this countdown on, honestly, because it captures something true about nearly every single entry on this entire list. Blue was never just a color choice for any of these women. It was armor for a big diplomatic moment, a quiet tribute to the royal who came before them, or simply the smartest, most confident choice available in a closet full of options. Some of these dresses were chosen to blend in with royal tradition. Others were chosen to quietly break from it. And at least one of them ended up dancing its way into the history books entirely by accident, in front of a room full of cameras that had absolutely no idea what they were about to capture. What is genuinely striking, looking back across all 30 of these entries side by side, is just how much of modern royal fashion history essentially runs through this one single color. Grace Kelly set an early template for glamour in the 1950s. Diana pushed that template further than anyone before her, using blue almost like a second language across her entire public life. And Kate has spent the better part of the last 15 years proving, gown after gown, coat after coat, that the lessons those two women taught the world about the power of a perfectly chosen blue dress are very much still being put into practice today by an entirely new generation of royal women who grew up watching them do it first, and who will almost certainly pass the exact same lesson down to whichever royal comes next. It is also worth remembering that every single dress on this list started out as nothing more than a sketch on a piece of paper, discussed in a fitting room months before anyone outside a small circle of designers and dressers ever saw it. A color swatch gets chosen, a silhouette gets debated, and an entire team spends weeks worrying over a hemline or a neckline that, if everything goes right, ends up circling the globe within hours of finally being revealed. Most of those dresses do their job quietly and are forgotten within a news cycle or two. A rare handful, the ones we have spent this entire countdown celebrating, end up doing something else entirely. They outlast the event they were built for, the reign they were worn during, and sometimes even the woman who wore them. becoming genuine pieces of cultural shorthand that people instantly recognize decades later. That is an enormous amount of weight to place on a length of blue silk or velvet, and yet somehow, dress after dress, generation after generation, it keeps happening all over again. Which of these 30 dresses surprised you the most? Did your personal favorite make the cut, or do you think we left an iconic blue moment off this list entirely? Let us know down in the comment section below, because we genuinely read every single one of them. And your picks absolutely shape which royal fashion countdown we tackle next. And if you enjoyed this entire trip through royal fashion history with us today, go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe to the channel right now if you have not already done that, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next big countdown the moment it drops. Thanks so much for watching all the way through, and we will see you in the very next one.